His anxiety wasn't just a feeling, it was a public broadcast. That was the first thing Elias Thorne realized when he stepped onto the crystalline floor of the Ethos Spire. He was a diplomat, technically, a junior one, the kind they sent when the trade dispute was over something trivial, like grain shipments or asteroid mining rights. He was supposed to be stoic. He was supposed to be a slate of gray, impenetrable marble. Instead, Elias was a radio station stuck between channels, blasting static and anxious disco music at max volume. Truth is, humans weren't built for the spire. We evolved to hide. We evolved to smile while we were screaming inside, to say we were fine when our hearts were doing gymnastics. But here in the shimmering silent court of the ethos, privacy was an archaic concept. The air itself felt thick, like walking through heavy syrup, humming with the silent conversations of 100 telepathic minds. To High Sovereign Lyra, seated on a dais that looked uncomfortably like a suspended icicle, the silence of her court was usually suffocating. It was a politeness, a curated, sterile silence where her advisors projected only what they wanted her to see: smooth shapes, calming colors, lies wrapped in silk. Then Elias walked in. He didn't project smooth shapes. He projected a riot. From her vantage point, Lyra didn't just see a small, soft-skinned mammal in an ill-fitting synthetic suit. She felt a chaotic storm front. She could hear him worrying about whether his tie was straight. She heard a fragment of a song about a cat in a cradle. She heard a sudden, sharp spike of fear regarding the structural integrity of the floor. He followed immediately by a craving for something called a cheeseburger. It was deafening. It was improper. And to Lyra, whose life had been a parade of carefully constructed mental masks, it was the most beautiful thing she had ever heard. Silence is a lie, but his chaos was the truth she needed. Elias, oblivious to the fact that he was effectively shouting into a megaphone, cleared his throat. He clutched his briefcase to his chest, a classic human shield maneuver. "High Sovereign," he said, his voice cracking just a fraction. "I bring greetings from the Terran Coalition." He bowed. It was a good bow, respectful. But in his head, Lyra heard the screaming commentary, "Don't trip." Oh God, her eyes are terrifying. No, not terrifying, intense, like staring into a nebula. "Stop staring at the nebula, Elias. Look at her shoulder. Is that a shoulder? Not biology is weird. I hope I didn't forget to lock my apartment." Lyra shifted on her throne. Her primary heart, usually a slow, rhythmic thud, skipped a beat. Then her secondary heart fluttered to catch up. A flush of violet bioluminescence rippled across her neck scales, a physiological betrayer of amusement. The advisors around her stiffened. They projected waves of disapproval. Primitive, no discipline. A noisy mind is a weak mind. But Lyra leaned forward, her long, slender fingers gripping the armrests. She bypassed the formal telepathic greeting protocols, ignoring the shock of her court. "Speak, Earthman," she said aloud. Her voice was like grinding stones, deep and resonant, vibrating in Elias's ribcage. "We are listening." Elias blinked. He hadn't expected them to use vocal cords. He started into his prepared speech about grain tariffs. But the script in his head was getting derailed by the sensory overload. He was sweating. He could feel the trickle going down his back, and he frantically tried to command his sweat glands to cease and desist, which naturally the entire room heard. It was during the third paragraph of the tariff proposal that the culture clash truly hit. Elias stopped mid-sentence. He wasn't looking at the trade documents anymore. He was looking at Lyra. The sovereign was pinching the bridge of her nose, or rather, the ridge where a nose would be on a human. Her eyes were squeezed shut. To the ethos court, this was a sign of deep contemplation, a moment where the sovereign was parsing the complex telepathic data streams. They respected the pause. They waited for her mental decree. But Elias didn't know about telepathic data streams. When he was operating on pure, primitive instinct, he saw a posture he recognized from his mother after a double shift, or his college roommate during finals week. He saw pain. Without thinking, which was his default state apparently, Elias broke protocol. He stopped talking about grain. He stepped away from the podium. "Excuse me," Elias said, his voice dropping the formal diplomat tone for something softer, something incredibly human. "Are you okay?" The silence in the room shattered. The advisors projected spikes of alarm. "Insolence! Approaching the dais!" Lyra's eyes snapped open. The headache, a byproduct of filtering the constant mental noise of her sycophantic court, had been throbbing behind her eyes for hours. She was used to ignoring it. She was used to her court ignoring it, because to acknowledge weakness was to invite challenge. "I beg your pardon?" she asked, genuinely confused. "Your head," Elias said, gesturing vaguely to his own forehead. He reached into his pocket. The guards tensed. Mental blast prepared to liquefy his cortex. Elias pulled out a small, crinkly foil packet. He didn't notice the guards. He was too busy looking at Lyra with that distinct Terran expression, the scrunched-up brow of unsolicited concern. "It's pretty bright in here, and the air pressure is intense," he rambled, stepping up to the dais. "I get migraines too. Look, I know I'm not supposed to give you stuff, but this is just a cool patch. It's for humans, but it's just menthol and hydrogel. It helps. Honestly," he held it out. The logic of the ethos court short-circuited. They were a species of immense mental power. They could calculate slipstream trajectories in their heads. But they had spent so much time refining their minds that they had forgotten how to read a body. They relied on telepathy so heavily that they were blind to the physical cringe of pain, the subtle tremor of fatigue. Elias, stripped of telepathy, had brought a gut feeling to a mind-reading gunfight. Lyra looked at the foil packet. Then she looked at the human. His mind was still a mess, a swirling vortex of, "Please don't execute me," and she really looks like she needs a nap. It was the lack of guile that stunned her. He wasn't trying to gain leverage. He wasn't manipulating her for the trade deal. He simply saw discomfort, and his biology screamed at him to fix it. It was a nurturing instinct that felt alien to a species of apex predators. Yet warmth spread through her chest, heating her cold blood. She extended a hand. The scales on her palm were iridescent, hard as diamond. Elias placed the flimsy foil packet in her hand. His fingers brushed hers, warm, soft, fragile. The contact sent a jolt through Lyra that had nothing to do with telepathy. It was electric, grounding, and terrifyingly intimate. "Thank you, Elias Thorne," she murmured. "You're welcome," he whispered back, stepping away, his face turning a brilliant shade of crimson. Just peel the back off. Stick it on your forehead, or wherever it hurts." As Lyra watched him retreat to the podium, stumbling slightly over his own feet, she realized two things. First, the pain in her head was receding, not from the medicine, but from the distraction of his presence. And second, for the first time in a century, she didn't want to hear the polite, filtered thoughts of her people. She wanted to hear the rest of the song about the cat in the cradle. The grand gala of the 7 moons was supposed to be the victory lap. The grain tariffs were settled, mostly due to Elias accidentally projecting a mental image of a starving puppy during a crucial negotiation stalemate, and the mood was festive. Or at least as festive as a room full of telepathic, 7-foot-tall reptilian aristocrats could get. It mostly involved polite nodding and the occasional ripple of bioluminescence. Elias stood near the buffet table, nursing a glass of something that tasted like fizzy cough syrup. He was trying to keep his thoughts quiet, counting prime numbers in his head to drown out his social anxiety. 2, 3, 5, 7. Does she know I'm looking at her? 11, 13. She looks like a galaxy wrapped in silk. 17. When Lyra across the room caught the thought, her dorsal spines flushed a soft, pleased teal. She sipped her nectar, enjoying the mental background noise of Elias Thorne. It was grounding. It was real. But then the rhythm changed. The interruption didn't come from a mental shout. It came from a void. A server was moving through the crowd carrying a tray of crystal flutes. To the ethos dignitaries, the figure was barely registered. He wore a dampening weave, a piece of tech that smoothed out mental projection for privacy. To the telepaths, he was just a blank spot in the data stream, a non-entity. They ignored him because their evolution had taught them to focus on the signal, not the silence. Elias, however, wasn't looking at the signal. He was looking at the guy's hands. The server's knuckles were white. He was sweating, despite the room being temperature controlled to a chilly standard. And he wasn't looking at the guest's cups. He was looking at the unprotected expanse of Lyra's back. Elias's stomach dropped. It wasn't a calculation. It wasn't a deduction. It was that primitive, monkey brain alarm bell that had kept his ancestors from being eaten by saber-toothed cats in the tall grass. Something's wrong. The server reached into his tunic, not for a bottle, but for something metallic and jagged. The ethos guards stood motionless. They were scanning for hostile intent, for the mental flare of aggression that usually preceded an attack. But the assassin was shielded. Mentally, he was a ghost. Physically, he was 3 steps away from the High Sovereign. Elias didn't think. If he had thought, he would have realized that tackling an alien assassin was a terrible idea for a man whose only combat training was a weekend self-defense class at the Y move. Elias dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor, a sharp acoustic crack that no one expected. In the same second he lunged, he collided with the server just as the jagged blade came up. It was a messy, undignified tackle. There was no martial arts grace, just the desperate flailing of limbs and the grunt of impact. They went down in a heap of spilled nectar and broken crystal. The assassin's weapon skittered across the floor, spinning harmlessly away. The room exploded into chaos. Guards materialized, weapons drawn. The assassin was pinned instantly, his dampening weave ripped away, exposing a mind screaming with malice. But Elias lay on the floor, gasping for air, clutching his ribs. Ow, 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 ow. Did I break a rib? I definitely broke a rib. Is Lyra okay? Did I get drink on my suit? This is a rental. The silence that followed was absolute. Lyra stood over him. Her eyes were wide, her pupils blown into perfect circles. She looked from the pinned assassin, who she hadn't sensed until the moment of impact, to the small, fragile human groaning on her floor. She realized then the terrifying blind spot of her species. They lived in a world of minds, assuming that if a thought didn't exist, the danger didn't either. They had forgotten that the universe was physical, that it was heavy and sharp, and moved without permission. She knelt. It was an act that caused her advisors to gasp. Sovereigns did not kneel. She didn't care. Elias? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm good, Elias wheezed, Dee giving a shaky thumbs up. Just knocked the wind out of me. Did I get him? You saved me, she whispered. We did not see him. How did you know? Elias blinked, trying to sit up and regretting it immediately. I don't know. He just looked sketchy. Sweaty hands, shifty eyes. Just a gut feeling. Lyra placed a hand on his chest, right over his beating heart. A gut feeling. It was a biological redundancy she had dismissed as primitive, yet it had succeeded where the most advanced telepathic sensor net had failed. Later, in the quiet of the medical bay, the lights were dimmed to a soothing amber. Elias was sitting up on the biobed, a regenerative patch fused to his side. The adrenaline had faded, leaving him in that hazy, vulnerable state of exhaustion. Lyra sat in the chair next to him. She had dismissed her guards. She wanted the air clear. Mike, you are very loud, Elias, she said softly. Elias winced. I know. I'm sorry. I'm trying to learn the meditation techniques you gave me, but my brain just doesn't. I do not want you to learn them, she interrupted. He looked at her, confused. You don't? No. She leaned forward, her bioluminescence humming a low, warm gold. Today, your noise saved my life. But even before that, she hesitated. For a telepath, admitting this was scandalous. My world is a performance, Elias. Everyone projects what they think I wish to see. It is a hall of mirrors, beautiful but hollow. She reached out, her cool, scaled fingers lacing through his warm ones. But you project the truth. When you are scared, you scream it. When you are happy, you sing it. And when you look at me, Ilias froze. His face heated up. Oh no, don't listen to that part. Lyra smiled, a genuine, toothy expression that crinkled the corners of her eyes. When you look at me, she continued, tightening her grip, you project a warmth that makes my double hearts ache. You think I am, what was the phrase? A galaxy wrapped in silk. Elias groaned and covered his face with his free hand. I am never going to recover from this. I should just move to a farm on an asteroid. Don't, Lyra said. She pulled his hand away from his face, forcing him to look at her. Stay. The request hung in the air, heavy and sweet. Why? Elias asked, his internal monologue finally quieting down to a single, hopeful question. Because, Lyra said, leaning her forehead gently against his, closing the distance between their worlds. I am tired of guessing what people feel. With you, I never have to guess. Elias looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time he didn't worry about the diplomatic implications or the biological differences. He just felt the cool press of her skin and the steady, synchronized rhythm of her hearts. Okay, he whispered. I'll stay. And in the silence of the room, Lyra heard his thought, loud and clear, and beautifully unfiltered. I'm already home.